Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we get into tonight's second half, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, my merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description below. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and it does matter. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get into today's second half. Shall we? Tonight we are going to dive deeper into the conspiracy / truth of Dulce, Dumbs, NWO, and more. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Project Grudge / Blue Book. And guess what? There's some pictures. And they are, well, they're pretty intense. And I'm really on the fence about these pictures because I've never seen them online before. Let's get into this. A series of Project Grudge / Blue Book reports have been released over the years in connection with the United States Air Force investigation into UFOs, which was supposedly terminated with the release of the Condon Report in the late 60s. Reports 1 through 12 of Grudge / Blue Book were generally innocuous and contained no classified or truly sensitive material. There was a final report, number 14, which was widely circulated and about which an entire book was written, Flying Saucers, an analysis of the Air Force Project Blue Book Special Report number 14 by Leon Davidson. Fifth edition was published in 1976 by Blue Book Publishers, 64 Prospect Street, White Plains, New York, 10606. Missing from public view, however, was Report 13. Several years ago, Bill English, son of an Arizona state legislator and former captain in the Green Beret, had been assigned to an RAF listening post north of London as an information analyst. English was, in the course of his duties, asked to prepare and analyze of the elusive Grudge 13 report. On his discharge from his work at the listening post, he returned to the States and began to do a little UFO research on his own. English had been no stranger to the UFO phenomenon. In the Vietnam War, he was a member of the Special Force Investigative Team and went to retrieve a B-52 that had been forced down by a UFO and all of the occupants killed. Communications had been received from the B-52 before it went down to the effect that it was under attack by a UFO, a large light. The plane was found intact, sitting in the jungle. There was no swath indicating of a crash landing. Only the bottom of the fuselage showed any damage. There was no damage to the underside of the engine pods. Although the plane was completely intact, the entire crew had been mutilated. English, through contacts he maintains, has determined that the U.S. government most definitely supports a project dealing specifically with UFOs and captured aliens. According to what he has learned, the U.S. government captured a trio of aliens, and that as of the mid-80s, one of these beings was still alive in captivity. English also claims that, quotes, one point in the early 50s until the mid-60s, the Air Force maintained relocation and debriefing colonies for people who had experienced close encounters of the third and fourth kind. They were isolated for all intent and purpose for the rest of their lives, end quote. He doubts that these colonies are still in existence. English dictated 2 audio cassettes outlining what he remembered from the Grudge 13 report. These audio cassettes were transcribed into a handwritten note by another person. The information contained therein indicated what he had been suspected all along, that the U.S. government was involved in the greatest deception in the history of mankind, and that not only did flying saucers exist, but the government had several in secret storage and had captured at least 3 living aliens. The following is a summary of what Bill English remembers from what he read during that day in June of '77 of Project Grudge / Blue Book Report number 13. Inbox diplomatic pouch under lock and key system. Lock had been opened, and the pouch was easily accessed. Standard diplomatic couriers, pouch marked American Embassy couriers. Contained pouch serial number JL327, Delta. Inside a publication with red tape, which indicated code red security precautions, and an Air Force disposition form. Disposition form was standard, white-paged copy. Title was Analysis Report. Further down was Analysis Enclosed Report under Code Red Measures, Give Abstract Breakdown, and Report on Validity. Observe all Code Red Measures. Analysis required immediately. Underneath were a series of dashes, then the letters NDF. Then another series of dashes. Below that, lower left-hand corner, were the initials WJB. Publication was withdrawn from the pouch. It measured approximately 8 inches by 11 inches with a gray cover, heavily bound, paperback styled, similar to a technical manual. Across the center front, it read Grudge / Blue Book Report number 13. It was dated 1953 through 1963. In the lower right-hand corner was AFSN 2246-3. In the upper left-hand corner was the word Anna noted. Across the front upper right-hand corner to lower left-hand corner was red tape indicating code red security measures. Across the front was stamped in red ink, Top secret, need to know, only crypto clearance 14 required. Inside the front cover upper left-hand corner were handwritten notations in ink which were blacked out by a black felt pen. Inside the cover sheet was basically the same information as the cover. Second page was the title page. Next page after that was an appendix with numerous notations. Notations dealt with inserts of what appeared to be photos and additional notes. At the bottom of the third page it read J/BV page 1 through 624. Title page was the subject letter. Complete list of appendix not remembered. Title, some notes on the practical applications of the worst Nemo equations. Table of contents. Part 1. On the design of generators to accomplish strain-free molecular translation. Part 2. The generation of space-time discontinuous, closed, open, and folded. Part 3. On the generation of temporary pseudo-acceleration locus. Part 1, Chapter 1. Design criteria for a simple generator and control system, referring to Equation 17, Appendix A. Part 2, Chapter 1. Continuation of Einstein's theory of relativity to final conclusion. Part 3, Chapter 1. Possible applications of Einstein theory of relativity at conclusion. Part 1, Chapter 2, Reports of UFO Encounters, Classification, Close Encounters of the First Kind, Subtitle, Sightings and Witnesses. Part 2, Chapter 2, Close Encounters of the Second Kind, Subtitle, UFO Sightings Witnessed Within Close Proximity. Part 3, Chapter 2, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Subtitled, UFO Encounters and Extraterrestrial Life Forms Witnessed and Personal Encounters, Subtitle, Colonies, Relocation thereof. Case Histories, Chapter 3, Part 1, Military Encounters with UFOs. Chapter 3, Part 2, Military Reports Concerning Sightings on Radar and Electronic Surveillance of UFOs. Subsection 2, Analysis Report. J. Allen Hynek, Lieutenant Colonel Friend. Appendix continued on for about 5 pages. Opening subject page consisted of report of findings as written by Lieutenant Colonel Friend and his analysis. Must stress at this point that the version seen was annotated. There were inserts that were added to this copy after it had been initially printed. Sections remembered very vividly are the photographs and the reports concerning captive sightings of various UFOs to include Mexico, Sweden, United States, and Canada. There were also what was then classified close encounters of the third kind. It was made very clear that these people, whom it was determined had genuine CE-3s, were moved in the middle of the night by the Air Force personnel and relocated to various sites in the Midwest and Northwest parts of the states. In many cases, these people experienced physical ailments from exposure to various types of radiation. One case especially noted and remembered very vividly was entitled Darlington Farm Case out of Ohio. Case apparently took place in October of '53. Man, wife, and 13-year-old son were sitting down at the dinner table. As they sat, their lights in the farmhouse began to dim. Dogs and animals raised a ruckus outside. A 13-year-old boy got up from the dinner table to see what was going on. Called his mother and father to come look at the funny lights in the sky. Father and mother got up, and as they got up, the son went outside into the yard. Father and mother went out onto the porch. When they got onto the porch, one of the dogs broke loose from the leash beside the house and came running around the front. Boy began chasing it out into the open field. As mother and father watched the light come down from the sky, they described it as a round ball of fire, and it began to hover over the field where a boy and a dog had run to. As they stood and watched, the mother and father heard the boy scream for help, whereupon the father grabbed his shotgun, which was right next to the door, and began to run into the field, with the mother following. When the father got into the field, he saw his son being carried away by what looked like little men into this huge, fiery-looking object. As it took off, the father fired several rounds at the object to no avail. They found the dog. Its head was crushed, but no sign of the boy or any footprints of the little men who apparently carried him off. The father immediately called Darlington police, and they immediately came out to investigate. The official report read that the boy had run off and was lost in the forest which bordered the farm. Within 48 hours, the Air Force made the determination that the family was to be relocated, and the mother and father were picked up by the Air Force intelligence, and all personal belongings and possessions were loaded into a United States Air Force trucks and moved to a northwestern relocation site. The mother was in shock and had to go through a great deal of psychotherapy and deprogramming, as did the father. One interesting aspect about this case was classification under the Air Force report, which read it was a genuine CE-3, and that for good of the national security, the mother and father had been relocated to relocation zones Z21-14. Not sure whether this indicates map grid coordinates or latitude, longitude. According to the report, there were at least 4 relocation sites across the United States, depending on which type of encounter these people had. The report indicated that there were extensive medical facilities available at these relocation sites to deal with all medical emergencies up to and including radiation poisoning. The report mentioned a site located in the Utah-Nevada area, but no indication of its purpose or what it's for. Report gave clear indication of reports of human mutilation. Most notably was a case witnessed by Air Force personnel in which an Air Force Sergeant EE-6 by the name of Jonathan P. Leavitt was observed being taken captive aboard what appeared to be a UFO at White Sands Missile Test Range in New Mexico. This abduction took place in March of 1956 at about 0300 local, and was witnessed by Major William Cunningham of the United States Air Force Missile Test Command near Holman Air Force Base. Major Cunningham and Sergeant Lovett were out in a field downrange from the launch sites looking for debris from a missile test when Sergeant Lovett went over a ridge of a small sand dune and was out of sight for some time. Major Cunningham heard Sergeant Lovett scream in what was described as terror and agony. The major, thinking that the sergeant had been bitten by a snake or something, ran over the crest of the dune and saw Sergeant Lovett was dragged into what appeared to him and was described as being a silvery disc-like object which hovered in the air approximately 15 to 20 feet. Major Cunningham described what appeared to be a long snake-like object which was wrapped around Sergeant's legs and was dragging him into the craft. Major Cunningham admittedly froze as the sergeant was dragged inside the disc and observed the disc going up into the sky very quickly. Major Cunningham got on the Jeep radio and reported the incident to Missile Command, whereupon Missile Command confirmed a radar sighting. Several search parties went out into the field looking for Sergeant Lovett. Major Cunningham's report was taken and he was admitted to the White Sands Base dispensary for observation. The search for Sergeant Lovett was continued for 3 days, at the end of which his nude body was found approximately 10 miles downrange. The body had been mutilated. The tongue had been removed from the lower portion of his jaw. An incision had been made just under the tip of the chin and extended all the way back to the esophagus and larynx. He had been emasculated and his eyes had been removed. Also, his anus had been removed, and there were comments in the report on apparent surgical skill of the removal of these items, including genitalia. The report commented that the anus and genitalia had been removed as though a plug, which in the case of the anus extended all the way up to the colon. There was no sign of blood within the system. The initial autopsy report confirmed that the system had been completely drained of blood and that there was no vascular collapse due to death by bleeding. Sub-comment was added that this was unusual because anyone who dies or has complete loss of blood there is a vascular collapse. Also noted was that when the body was found, there were a number of dead predatory-type birds within the area who apparently had died after trying to partake of the sergeant's body. There were a number of extremely grisly black and white photos. From all indications, the body had been exposed to the elements for at least a day or two. The New Mexican sun in the desert is extremely hot and debilitating under normal circumstances. In this section of the report, it also indicated that there were numerous occasions in which a UFO tracked alongside a fired missile, and on one occasion, said missile was observed being taken aboard a UFO while in flight. The speeds indicated were absolutely phenomenal. The report also indicated that there were a number of recovery teams that were activated specifically for the purpose of recovering any and all evidence of UFOs and UFO sightings. Most notably recorded in a publication was what they called Recovery Team Alpha. It was reported that Alpha had been extremely active in a number of areas and on certain occasions had traveled outside the continental United States. Alpha was based out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and was on the move constantly. Further information in the report consisted of such things as reported sightings and where Air Force planes had been destroyed or had combat encounters or had been attacked by UFOs. Also, there were autopsy reports of various human mutilations. About midway through the report came a section which dealt specifically with photographs. Each photo was labeled independent to certain reports. A number of the photos in there dealt with a recovery program of some type that took place in the southwestern part of the United States. They did not give a location name, but they gave grid coordinates for that area. There is no clear indication to exactly where it was. The photos dealt with special teams that were called in to recover a crashed UFO. It also dealt with alien bodies and autopsy reports, autopsy-type photographs, high-quality color, 8x10, 5x7. Photo 1 showed an alien being on an autopsy table, which is a metal table with runnels and traps underneath to trap fluid and feces. Body appeared to be a little short at 4 feet. Table was about 7 feet. No clothing on the body, no genitalia. Body completely heterous. Head was rounded cranium, slightly enlarged, almond-shaped eyes, slits where the nose would be, extremely small mouth, receding chin line, holes where the ears would be. Photo was taken at an angle. Side view looked at body from 45-degree elevation. Left hand was visible. Head was facing the left. Body was right to left position. Head on right, feet on left. Eyes were closed, apparently oriental looking and almond shaped. Left hand slightly larger than normal. Wrist coming down just about 2 to 3 inches above the knees. Wrist appeared to be articulated in a fashion that allowed a double joint with 3-digit fingers. Wrist was slender. There was no thumb. A palm was almost non-existent. The 3 fingers were in direct extension from the wrist. The color of skin was a bluish-gray, dark bluish-gray. At the base of the body, there was a darker color, indicating the body was dead for some time. Body fluid or blood had settled to the base of the body. This indicated that the body had been examined before beginning the autopsy. Picture showed the beginning stages of the autopsy. Following standard procedure, the body was slit from crotch to just under the chin, and a green viscous liquid was evident. There were internal organs, but these could not be identified. Photos thereafter concerned specific areas of the internal organs of what appeared to be a small cluster of multi-valved heart, or at least 2 hearts within the cadaver. No accurate description of the autopsy report or what was found within the corpse accompanying photos, indication that there was no stomach or digestive tract per se. Later analysis showed that fluid within the body was chlorophyll-based liquid, which apparently dealt with photosynthesis or similar process. The report theorized that nourishment was taken in through the mouth. However, since there was no digestive tract or anything of this nature, the waste products were excreted through the skin. One section of the report did specify that cadavers were extremely odorous, but this could be accounted for by either deterioration or a number of other things, but theory was that waste was excreted through pores of skin. They could only theorize in the report because there was no xenobiology. A report by Dr. J. Allen Hynek was recalled vividly, which indicated that he had also studied the information provided by this particular case, and that he felt that it was indeed a genuine UFO capture, and subsequently the alien was part of that UFO. Dr. Hynek was non-committal, but did, however, sign the report. Also indicated in the report that he did not view bodies personally, but viewed photographs and accompanied reports for autopsy. Other photos dealt with a number of bodies, which were vivisection in various ways. At one point, the head was removed from the body and photographed, and an autopsy was performed on the head. The cranium was opened and brain matter was photographed and evident. Interesting thing about the photo was that there was a rigid bone or divided partition type bone running directly through the center of the skull from front to back, as though dividing 2 brains, one from the other. This seemed apparent from the picture. The skin was completely removed from the cranial structure, and the skull was laid bare as much as possible. At one point, the skull was cut directly in half, and photos showed underdeveloped esophagus and nasal cavity. No clear photo of eye orbs, as we know them, just photos of complete vivisection of skull itself. Numerous photos of flesh of the being, starting with cutaneous and subcutaneous micro photograph palettes, plates, appeared to be a cellular study done under microscope and electron microscope type photo, extreme magnification of tissue samples. This concluded the Bill English statement, which was transcribed from 2 cassette tapes. I obtained this handwritten memorandum in August of '87 from Paul Benowitz during my visit with him in Albuquerque. In September of '88, I received a call from Bill English. I asked for a chance to meet him and discuss the Grudge 13 report. He said that this could be arranged, but that the meeting would have to be on his terms for security reasons. He explained that there had been several attempts on his life by persons unknown since he had made the cassette tapes about 6 years ago. We arranged a meeting at the small airport in Virginia on September 16th, my birthday. Wow. It was to sit in the lobby with my black flight bag, and for identification purpose, I told Bill what I would be wearing. I had no telephone number for Bill. As I walked in the small airport lobby after a 3-hour drive from Richmond, I immediately noticed 2 gentlemen who seemed out of place from this locale. Both were wearing pinstripe 3-piece suits. Both had dark sunglasses. One was a black gentleman. One was stationed inside the lobby door, looking out at the parking lot. One was leaning against the airline container. I sat down after a few minutes, was approached by a tall, bearded man in jeans and a heavy jacket. He asked if I wanted to have a drink. We walked outside and he introduced himself as Bill English. We drove Bill's car to a local bar. About 5 minutes after we had ordered, he started talking. The men I had seen in the airport came into the bar and sat down. We left for Bill's house and never saw the men again for the next 2 days. During the next 2 days, I stayed with Bill and his wife and 2 kids in a small trailer in the middle of a field on his farm. I asked him endless questions concerning Grudge 13 document, how he happened to see it, what happened to him after he saw it, and literally thousands of questions about the content of the document. My impression of Bill English was that he is totally honest, that he stood behind his statements and recollection of the Grudge 13 papers, that he was devoted husband, father to his wife and 2 children. Bill English was ready to come forward and enter into any debate regarding the legitimacy of the document and his recollections thereof. Of Bill's compassion for his father and his father's feelings concerning Bill and the reason for their occasional disagreements, I have tremendous respect for Bill and what he has tried to do in getting this information out to the public. It has been tremendous personal risk, not to mention the ridicule by sponsored agents such as Bill Moore, who stated that the Grudge 13 papers were a fraud. What follows is additional information about Grudge 13 papers that I obtained from Bill during my visit. In addition to the following, Bill painstakingly drew many sketches of the photos of different types of flying saucer, the equipment obtained from them, including a sketch of a football-sized nuclear generator and sketches of the autopsy photos. From my notes taken during my 2-day meeting, Bill described a photo taken of 3 alive aliens, very clear. Aliens standing against a white tile wall, looking confused, as if they had been shoved, were looking in different directions. Report said that the aliens had contacted a U.S. intelligence agency for initial 2 meetings, one at Holman, one at Homestead. U.S. Air Force relocation personnel for persons involved in close encounters were referred to in report as Men in Black. Major Cunningham was initially accused of murdering Sergeant Jonathan P. Levitt. Charges were later dropped. Bill English's place of employment in England was RAF Security Service Command, RAF Chicksands. Entire Grudge 13 report was written as if the report was geared towards preparation of defenses. Report told of ultrasonic weapons found in Germany at the end of World War II that could shatter 4-inch thick armor. Report told of sensitive military and industrial areas at which personnel experienced missing time. Report talked about missing time experienced with personnel associated with the North American X-15 rocket plane project. Report stated that there were 17 different extraterrestrial species accounted for up at the time of this report. Extraterrestrials were referred to as ELFs, alien life form, in this report. Report referred to one UFO that was recovered and test flown. The UFO blew up as two Air Force pilots aboard attempted to leave the atmosphere. English recalls the date as the mid-50s. Report refers to flying saucer program as Project Red Light, and that a secret installation had been constructed in the middle of the Atomic Energy Commission testing ground in Nevada. At the time of the report, 11 alien cadavers were being kept at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That additional alien cadaver were being stored at 4 to 5 other medical institutions. That two flying saucers of extraterrestrial origin had been tested in the wind tunnel at Langley, Virginia. At the time of the report, one disc was being stored at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. At the time of the report, one damaged disc was at the Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. At the time of the report, there had been 2 UFO incidences at Fort Riley, Kansas. At the time of the report, a detachment of the Alpha Recovery Team was based at Randolph Air Force Base. The report discussed civilian and military personnel who had been terminated to eliminate potential dangerous elements to national security. That General James Doolittle had been mentioned several times in this report, with the notation that Doolittle's prediction might be correct. There was no indication of what those predictions might have been. A short segment containing the quotation, by presidential order, certain aspects of research had been undertaken. Alright, so these photos were attached to this report, and a very strange thing happened while I was recording this upload. Normally, I have my phone in my studio with me, and it's not off, but just screen's off. I'm not watching anything, not listening to anything. It's just sitting on my other half of my desk. And as I was recording, my phone actively started to Google record and give me like an information, almost like it was almost like I was asking Google a question for an answer. And it was during the brief paragraph of photo 1 showed an alien being on an autopsy table, which is a metal table with runnels and traps underneath to trap fluid and feces. Body appeared to be a little short, 4 feet. Table was 7 feet. No clothing on the body, no genitalia. Body complete heteros. Head was rounded cranium, and this is where it started to record. Slightly enlarged. Eyes almond-shaped, slits where nose would be, extremely small mouth, receding chin line, holes where ears would be. So as I'm reading that paragraph, I hear my phone beep, and it kind of like, I just kept narrating or recording. Just, I was going to ignore it. I didn't know, because sometimes the sounds all sound alike. An email notification or whatever. But then I realized I had turned the volume off. And as I turned to look at my phone, I have a Samsung S22 Ultra. Bixby was activated, and Bixby was recording slightly enlarged almond-shaped eyes, slits where nose would be. And he was going to give me some sort of I don't know, his view on the statement, his view, their view, whoever's view. Someone may be listening. I don't know. I found it very weird, though. So I immediately took my phone out, just quickly reset it or whatever, and threw it in my bedroom. No more phone in the studio while I record now. That was strange, especially while talking about Dulce and NWO and crap like that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's second half as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. And with that, please stay safe, and may the Great Spirit watch over us all. May He guide us down that path that we call life.